Jerome.
Okay po. So first nga po yung financial accounting natin is for external purposes eh. Unlike sa managerial accounting kasi, it's for internal users kasi siya. So yung financial accounting is more on, we are following the standards, which is yung GAAP natin, tsaka yung PFRS. No? Ang analogy na ginagamit ko parate with my students is this one. Di ba iba yung pananamit natin pagka nasa labas tayo ng bahay, di ba? Comparing sa pananamit natin pagka nasa loob lang tayo ng bahay. No, mas presentable tayo pagka nasa labas tayo ng bahay because there are a lot of persons that will be seeing us. So we are yung parang you are presenting yourself well. Now, while in the internally pag nasa bahay tayo, ang sinusuot nating damit yung pinaka-komportable tayo, di ba? So same goes with financial accounting and managerial accounting. Sa financial accounting kasi, we are reporting to the public. So we must follow the standards that are given to us. Now, while unlike sa managerial accounting, since mga internal users ang gagamit nito, mas maganda, mas simple, mas komportable yung way natin on how we present our reports kasi nga majority of our management or board of directors probably hindi sila inclined with accounting. So mas simple, mas okay para mas maintindihan nila. Tapos for financial accounting, it's more on the historical. Nire-record na lang natin yung mga transactions na nangyari na. While sa managerial accounting, it is more on future kasi gagawin mo yung report para maging guideline siya, maging information siya sa management at sa board of directors. Gagawa pa lang sila ng desisyon. So it's more on future. Okay po. Tapos sa financial accounting, it will be mandatory. No? Mandatory na kailangan i-prepare yan. Pero for managerial accounting, hindi naman yan itatanong sa atin to prepare. We will not prepare one. No? Kung ano man po yung klase ng reports. Because there are a lot of methods. Or there are a lot of tools na ginagamit sa managerial accounting. So it will depend on the need of the management. I think yun lang po yung mga emphasize or na highlights that I want to discuss with you.
Yeah, very well said, Jerome. So as Jerome has mentioned, financial accounting is more on external reporting. And when we do external reporting, there are certain standards that we must follow. Yan. Ang sinusunod natin ngayon, yung IFRS o yung PFRS. No? So meron tayong framework na tinatawag. Meron tayong PFRS for SMEs. I think there's also PFRS for small businesses. There's another one. I don't know if they call it hindi ko kasi ginagamit niya. Smaller than SMEs, no? And then there is full PFRS, for the bigger
full
ones.
PFRS.
Okay. And then managerial accounting is for internal. So dito we can be creative, di ba? Using Excel, using different softwares. Ayan, na magagamit natin yung mga reports for managerial decision making. So walang certain format na inihingi sa atin. Different industries, different sizes, different locations, different places, different time scopes. They have. You can be creative as long as you want. Okay, thank you, Jerome. Okay. Now we have the three manufacturing costs. Very basic. Ang binibigay na example sa atin is a car. Now, what are the three elements of manufacturing costs? This car has direct materials, it has direct labor, and then it has manufacturing overhead. So what are direct materials? These are the materials that can be easily traced to the finished product. Example, in this car, there is a radio that is installed, and that is a direct material here. How do we define it? It is an integral part of the product and can be conveniently traced directly to the product. Okay, let's say for example, yung damit, if this is your product, yung tela na ginamit. It can be said that it is an integral part of the finished product and you can conveniently trace it to the finished product. Hindi ka mukha nung sinulid, o kaya yung maliliit na items of this product. Hindi sila madaling i-identify as a finished product. Okay. Then there's another one. Another element of manufacturing cost is the direct labor. Those labor costs that can be easily traced to individual units of product. Example, wages paid to automobile assembly workers. And then finally, we have the third component, those that are not directly related to the finished product. So if it is not direct materials, it is indirect materials. If it is not direct labor, it is indirect labor. And they are examples of manufacturing overhead. What are examples of indirect materials? In the manufacturing process, you have lubricants and cleaning supplies used in the automobile assembly plant. What are examples of indirect labor? Let us say the maintenance workers, the janitors, and security guards. Hindi sila directly traceable do sa finished product. Okay. Now, if there are manufacturing costs, yun ang pumapasok kasi dun sa ating cost of goods sold, no? Okay. In the income statement, okay, you also have the non-manufacturing costs. Then even the non-accountants, you have encountered yung income statement, no, the simple ones. Diba you have your sales, less cost of goods sold, you have your gross profit. Less the operating expenses, you have the net profit. That's the simple income statement. The operating expenses there, no, that you see, these are the non-manufacturing costs. Sometimes we call them the selling and the administrative costs. Okay? So what are selling costs? These are costs necessary to secure the order and deliver the product. What are administrative costs? All executive, organizational, and clerical costs. So can we give example of selling costs? Example, delivery charges. These are selling costs. What else?
Packaging po. Yes.
Yeah. Packaging, if it doesn't form part of the
Shipping.
Of the finished product. Okay. I think commissions, no, salaries of the salespersons, depreciation of your selling equipment, no, rental of your selling place, etc. So these are examples of your selling expenses. And then all those connected, not to general and administrative activities of the organization, they are classified as administrative costs. Okay, what are examples of administrative costs? Or salaries of the people there in the administrative department. What else?
Yung office supplies po siguro.
Mga office supplies, etc.
Utilities.
Utilities, no, in that department of the company. So yung utilities mo, pwedeng nandun sa selling, meron ka sa administrative, meron ka rin utilities dun sa manufacturing department. Part yun ng ano mo, ng overhead mo. Okay, next. Now we distinguish a product cost and a period cost and then give examples of each. Ayan. A simple definition of product cost. Ito yung cost na nagiging part siya ng inventory cost. Ayan. So let's see. Product costs include the direct materials, the direct labor, and the manufacturing overhead. Ito yung three elements kanina, no, ng manufacturing cost natin. As we incur them, dadaan muna sila dun sa inventory. And inventory is part, no, of your balance sheet. As we sell the product, we transfer cost from the inventory to the cost of goods sold. And the cost of goods sold is part of the income statement. Okay. Another way of saying it, dadaan muna sila sa asset, no? Pag nabenta siya, doon siya mapupunta doon sa expense. So from the balance sheet to the income statement, no? So yung pinag-uusapan natin kaninang direct materials, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead, papasok muna sila doon sa inventory cost, otherwise known as the product cost. And then as the product is sold, no, cost is transferred to cost of goods sold, which is a part of the income statement. Now, there are those costs naman, the non-manufacturing costs, okay, which are the selling and the administrative costs. Sometimes we call them the period costs because as we incur them, hindi na sila dadaan sa inventory. No? Nandun na sila sa expense. Nandun na sila sa expenses portion of your income statement. Did you get the difference between the two? Product costs, they are recorded first as part of the inventory. Okay, whereas yung period cost, diretso na sila dun sa expense. Okay, next, quick check. Okay. Which of the following costs would be considered a period rather than a product cost in a manufacturing company? So, sino si product cost? Diba? Sino si Sino si period cost? Ang tinatanong sa atin, which would be considered as period? Is it the manufacturing equipment depreciation? Yes or no?
No.
Property taxes on corporate headquarters?
No po.
Yes, a period cost.
Yes, no. Kasi property taxes on corporate headquarters. What would be this? What would be classification of this? Admin, no? General and admin. Okay. Direct materials cost, this would be what? Product, right? Electrical cost to light the production facility. What's this? Product period.
Product overhead.
Product, that's an overhead. And then sales commissions, product period.
Period.
Period. Okay, sales commissions, that will be a selling expense. And the answers are property taxes and sales commissions. They would be what? They would be classified as period costs. Okay, so when I say, do you follow? I'm actually asking the non-accountants. No? Of course, the accountants know this already. So we could have prime cost, no? Which tells us that prime cost is the combination of direct materials and direct labor. So if you add the direct materials and the direct labor, you get the prime cost. And if you add the direct labor and the manufacturing overhead, you get what? The conversion cost. So what's a common element, no, of prime cost and conversion cost? It is the direct labor. Did you get that? Okay, now we have the difference between a trading or a merchandising company and a manufacturing company. In terms of activities, yung mga trading or merchandising company, they buy and then they sell. Let's say, for example, no, yung mga grocery stores natin, they buy and then they sell. Diba they just buy the canned goods and then they sell the canned goods. They are trading or merchandising company. Okay, pero another classification naman of a business is the manufacturers. Meron silang additional step, which is they buy, they process, and then they sell. They buy, they process or manufacture, and then they sell the finished goods. I repeat, the difference between the two. In a trading company, the trading company buys and sells. The manufacturing company buys, processes, or manufactures, and then sells. All right? Now, when we look at the balance sheet of a trading or a merchandising company, you see that the merchandise inventory is one account only. So you have one type of inventory for a trading company. That's the merchandise inventory. But look here, a manufacturing company has three inventories, which are the raw materials inventory. Ito yung binili mong raw materials na hindi pa nagagamit sa production. And then you have work in process inventory. So ito yung na-start na yung process at hindi pa natatapos yung process. And then you have finished goods. Ito yung natapos na pero hindi mo pa siya nabebenta. So that's the difference in their balance sheet. Okay? Next. Oh, here are the definitions. Raw materials refer to materials waiting to be processed. And then work in process, these are the partially completed products. And then the finished goods, these are the completed products which are awaiting sale. Now let us look at the income statement, including the calculation of the cost of goods sold. Now you see the difference between the two. Okay, on the left side, you have the income statement for a merchandising company. As I mentioned kanina, di ba, you have your sales, less cost of goods sold, you have your gross profit, less operating expenses, you have your net profit. Now, let us look at the cost of goods sold section of your income statement. If you are a merchandising company, it looks like this. You have merchandise inventory beginning, add the purchases, you have the goods available for sale, less the merchandise inventory, and then you have your cost of goods sold. Okay, unlike in a manufacturing company, actually it's a little bit longer, pero naka-shortcut na lang dito, no? So ang pinapresent natin sa cost of goods sold natin, the finished goods beginning inventory plus the cost of goods manufactured. And as you notice, no, it is in red, no, red color. Ang ibig sabihin, meron pa siyang separate schedule for the cost of goods manufactured. We'll go to that later. So if you add the finished goods beginning and the cost of goods manufactured, you have your cost of goods available for sale. And then less the finished goods inventory, and then you have your cost of goods sold. This is the basic equation for inventory accounts. You have your beginning inventory plus the additions is equals to ending balance plus the withdrawals from inventory. Or you can change now the arrangement of the items. You can say beginning plus additions to inventory, less withdrawals from inventory, you have your ending inventory. If you happen to look at inventory summary reports, no? Like for example, yung mga, siguro yung mga burger machine, kasi di ba parang mayroon silang daily inventory report, di ba? O kaya yung sa mga restaurants, di ba usually meron silang beginning plus additions less issuances or sales, then they have the end. So, nakikita nila yung ending balance, tapos nagbibilang sila ngayon. Diba? Check nila kung tama or reconcile ba yung nabilang dun sa ending balances nila per records. Is this clear to you? Beginning plus additions, less sales or withdrawals from inventory is equals to ending inventory balance. Okay, let's have a quick check. So this is very elementary. No? For me, for the accountants, hindi ko alam dun sa hindi ko alam ha sa mga non-accountants. So pwede naman kayong pumara no kapag hindi niyo naintindihan. Sir, sandali, sabi mo mabilis. Hindi siya maintindihan. No? You tell me. So if your inventory balance at the beginning of the month was 1,000, bumili ka ng 100, nagbenta ka ng 300. So ilan ang natitira? Para namang ano to, parang game show no sa TV. O, bumili ka raw ng 1,000 plus 100, that's 1,100 minus 300. And the winner is, ayan, letter B, 800. Gets nyo? Uy, yung mga non-accountants, sagot kayo ha.
Yes, sir.
I wouldn't know ha. I wouldn't know. Pero yung mga negosyante dito na kahit hindi accounting, magaling na yan sa pagbibilang. Let's have the cost of goods manufactured. Kasi sabi natin kanina, di ba, finished goods beginning plus the cost of goods manufactured, which is nasa red ink kanina eh. Okay. How do you compute for the cost of goods manufactured? Okay. So we say that this schedule or this statement calculates the cost of raw materials, the direct labor, and manufacturing overhead used in production. It also calculates the manufacturing cost associated with goods that were finished during the period. Okay, so paano yung flow ng transactions? Okay, actually, ito na yung product cost flows. Ito na rin yung statement mo. Okay, so we begin with, sabi natin, kapag manufacturer ka, no, you will buy the raw materials, which you will convert into finished goods. So beginning raw materials inventory plus your purchases, you have the raw materials available for use in production. Less the raw materials used in production, then you have your direct materials used. Okay, the direct materials used, that is the first element of your manufacturing cost. What's the other two elements? What are the other two elements of manufacturing cost? The other one is direct
Labor.
Labor, correct. And the last one would be the overhead, the manufacturing overhead or the factory overhead. If I add the three, the direct materials, the direct labor, and manufacturing overhead, then I get the total manufacturing cost. All right, so as we proceed, no, so there is work in process beginning plus the total manufacturing cost, then you have your total work in process for the period, less the work in process inventory, and then you have the cost of goods manufactured. Okay, what have you observed? How do we treat inventories? We add the beginning inventory, we deduct the ending inventory. That we do for raw materials, for work in process, and then of course we do that also for finished goods. Okay, so this is another illustration. Now we connect it to the finished goods. If you remember the cost of goods sold that we presented a while ago for manufacturing companies, it says beginning finished goods inventory plus the cost of goods manufactured is equals to the cost of goods available for sale, less the ending finished goods inventory, then you have your cost of goods sold. How did we compute for the cost of goods manufactured? This one. And of course, consider the previous slide. All right? So flows, no, cost flows, manufacturing cost flows. So first, the materials, the direct labor, and the manufacturing overhead, they enter the balance sheet. As what? Raw materials inventory, the work in process inventory, and then the finished goods. And then as we sell, okay, the finished goods enter the cost of goods sold, which is a portion of the income statement. And of course, there are non-manufacturing costs. They are what? The selling and administrative expenses. Okay? So let's have a quick check. Beginning raw materials inventory was 32,000. During the month, 276,000 of raw materials was purchased. So 32 plus 276. Account at the end of the month revealed that there were 28,000 of raw materials. So 32 plus 276, do you follow? Minus 28,000. So anong magiging sagot? 280,000. Paano kung nakuha? Raw materials beginning of 32,000 plus purchases of 276,000 and no minus 28,000 ending raw materials inventory, then you have your raw materials placed in process or used in production. Can I proceed? All right, let's have another one. Another quick check. If you have direct materials used in production of 280,000 and a direct labor of 375,000 and factory overhead of 180,000, how much is the total manufacturing cost? Di ba i-add mo? Materials, labor, overhead. So let's add the three. 280 plus 375 plus 180,000. And the answer is 835,000. So kung susundan natin yung ating statement kanina, anong kasunod niyan? When you have the total manufacturing cost, add work in process beginning, less work in process end, plus finished goods beginning, less finished goods end. Let's see another quick check. Okay. If you have manufacturing cost of 835,000 plus beginning work in process of 125,000 and ending work in process of 200,000. So how much is the cost of goods manufactured? So 125 plus 835 minus 200. And you will get how much? Again, 760,000. O anong kasunod nun? When you have the cost of goods manufactured, what follows? Plus finished goods beginning, less finished goods end. So another quick check, beginning finished goods was 130,000. The cost of goods manufactured is 760,000. Your ending finished goods is 150,000. How do you compute? 130 plus 760 minus 150. And the answer is 740,000. This is now the cost of goods sold for the month. Okay? Now, let's understand the differences between variable costs and the fixed costs. Okay, this is now the behavior of cost. What do you mean when you say variable? When you say variable, it varies. It changes. So a variable cost changes with changes in the level of activity. But it should be within a relevant range. No? So kapag tumataas daw yung production, tumataas din yung variable cost. Okay, dun sa na-discuss nating mga types of cost, alin dun ang sa tingin mo ay variable? Yung direct materials at saka direct labor. You remember the radio installed in the car? No? So kung gagawa ka ng 10 kotse, so 10 radio ang kakailanganin mo. That's a variable cost. No, it changes with the changes in the level of activity. It changes proportionately. As the level of activity increases, now this variable cost increases also. As the level of activity decreases, the variable cost decreases also. Are you following? Okay, but don't forget this, it says within the relevant range, which means that that cost behavior is true only within a certain relevant range. Okay, now, what about the total fixed cost? Okay. I'll just check this out. Fixed cost, what's meant by fixed? Constant. No, it remains constant. It doesn't change. So even if there is a change in the level of activity, then cost doesn't change. Example, your rental expense. It doesn't matter. Let's say, for example, you're renting the manufacturing site for 100,000 pesos per month. Now, it doesn't matter whether you produce 50,000, 60,000, 70,000. The rental expense for the manufacturing site remains at 100,000. But that is, again, within the relevant range. Because that manufacturing site can handle only a maximum number of units to be produced. In excess of that or beyond that level of production, baka makailangan ka na ng additional manufacturing site. Did you get the difference between a total variable cost and the total fixed cost? Okay, now let's study them deeper. Now, it says here that total variable cost change when activity changes. But do you agree with me that the variable cost per unit does not change? You agree? Let us say, for example, yung cost ng radio kanina, 20,000 pesos per radio. If I will be needing 10 radios, then therefore, 20,000 times 10, that's 200,000. So the total variable cost, naging 200,000 siya. Yun ang gumalaw, yun ang tumaas. Pero yung 20,000 per radio, hindi siya gumalaw. So, is it correct to say that the unit variable cost or the variable cost per unit remains constant? Okay, now let's go to the total fixed cost. We said that the total fixed cost, let's say the 100,000 rental expense is the total fixed cost is 100,000. And then I told you if I produce 100,000 units, 90,000 units or 80,000 units, that total fixed cost of 100,000 wouldn't change. But tignan natin yung fixed cost per unit. Okay, magkano yung rental cost ko per unit if I produce 100,000 units? That's 100,000 divided by 100,000. Diba? So, anong mangyayari? 1 peso. Right? Now, what if I produce 200,000? Anong nangyari sa fixed cost ko per unit? And total rental ko is 100,000 divided by 200,000. 0.50 na lang siya ang fixed cost per unit. So, am I right in saying that the fixed cost per unit changes indirectly with the changes in the level of activity? Habang dumarami pala yung production, yung units to be produced, bumababa pala yung fixed cost per unit. No? Is that not the advantage of big companies? That's why kapag naglaban si small company at si big company, sino ang mas mababa? Yung unit cost. No, mas malaki yung cost ni maliit na company compared dun sa cost ni malaking company. What do we call that in our MBA world? We call that the economies of scale. Diba? Companies take advantage of the economies of scale. Diba? By managing their fixed costs. Because we said, no, that the more that you produce, mas bumababa yung ating fixed cost per unit. Did you get that? O ikaw na lang, example, ang magtinda ng mineral water, no? Kung ikaw ang gagawa nung bote na yon, yung plastic na lalagyan, no? If you manufacture only one, how much would it cost you? Or if you are manufacturing 100 of that. O compared to a big company na nagmamanufacture ng mga 200,000 per day. Siyempre mas mababa yung cost ni malaking company. And that is what we call economies of scale. Okay? So next. Here's an example. Your total texting bill is based on how many texts you send. So kung 1 peso per text, no, times 10, that's 10 pesos total. Pero yung 1 peso mo per text doesn't change. No? The variable cost per unit remains constant. What about this one? What if you have a monthly contract fee and that is a fixed cost? So, as you do texting, as you increase your texting, bumababa yung cost ng text mo per text. Okay. So that's the fixed cost per unit. The fixed cost per unit, okay, is pababa. Decreases as more calls are made. So ito yung summary nung napag-usapan natin, no? The total variable cost change in direct proportion to changes in the level of activity. Whereas the variable cost per unit remains constant. The total fixed cost remains constant, okay, and then the average fixed cost per unit goes down as the activity level goes up. So meron siyang indirect, no, relationship. Okay? Next, let's have a quick check. Which of the following costs would be variable with respect to the number of cones sold at a Baskins and Robbins shop? There may be more than one correct answer. Sino daw ang variable dito? Sa tingin mo, variable yung lighting ng store? Variable or fixed? Sagot.
Variable.
Variable ba yun? Mas marami ba yung nabibenta mong cones? Nararagdagan ba yung yung electricity cost? Is that variable? Parang hindi. Parang that's fixed. Yung wages of the store manager. Susunod ba to? Ayan. Fixed din to. That's fixed. What about yung ice cream na nabibenta? Siyempre, this is what? Variable ba to? Ayan. Yung napkin. Di ba? Binabalutan ng napkin. Di ba yung cone?
Variable.
That's variable. Okay. So, sino si variable? Si C at saka si D. Got it? Now, we understand the differences between direct costs and indirect costs. Doon sa pinag-usapan natin kaninang direct materials, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead, sino sa tingin mo ang direct doon? Sa pangalan pa lang, di ba? Yung dalawa. Si direct materials at saka si direct labor. Yung manufacturing examples natin kanina, yung indirect materials, tsaka yung kanyang indirect labor, and other manufacturing costs. Yun ang mga indirect. Right? So, assigning cost to cost objects. Okay, these are the direct costs. Costs that can be easily and conveniently traced to a unit of product or other cost object. Examples, the direct materials and the direct labor. Which are the indirect costs? Examples, manufacturing overhead. Okay? Okay. Let's have learning objective number 8. Okay, we define and give examples of cost classifications used in making decisions. First, we have the differential cost, we have the opportunity cost, and then the sunk costs. Or what are these costs? Cost classifications for decision making. Every decision involves a choice between at least two alternatives. Only those costs and benefits that differ between alternatives are relevant in a decision, and all other costs and benefits can and should be ignored. So later on, we will study what are costs that are relevant for decision making. At ang sabi nga, relevant costs are costs that will differ and costs that are to be incurred in the future. Right? Let us have an example. You have a job paying 1,500 per month in your hometown. You have a job offer in another town that pays 2,000 per month. Pero, you will have to incur transportation costs of 300 per month. Okay. So, what's the difference in cost? Siyempre, kukunin mo yung difference in salary, di ba? Your difference in salary is 500. But you will not decide immediately na, ay, lipat na ako doon, mas mataas, 2,000 ang sweldo. Lipat na ako sa Clark. Baba ng sweldo sa San Fernando. O, pero tignan mo, mamamasahe ka, magpapagasolina ka ng 300. So actually, ang net benefit mo lang talaga dito is 500 minus 300. Eh, nung nagtrabaho ka sa Clark, di ba, gumising ka pa ng maaga. Diba? Hindi pa kasama yon sa computation. Yun ang sinasabi ko dun sa mga accountants namin na nagre-resign. Sir, lipat na ako sa Clark, mas mataas ang sweldo. Konti lang ang difference, sabi ko, kasi mas mataas nga yung sweldo, eh magpapagasolina ka, tapos gigising ka pa ng maaga. Pero hindi, resign pa rin siya. Lipat pa rin siya ng Clark. Nakita nyo yung difference? No? Differential cost and revenue. Okay, what is opportunity cost? Yan. Opportunity cost is what? It's the benefit forgone, for choosing an alternative. You have two alternatives, di ba? Okay. So since pinili mo yung isa, merong nawalang isa. Example, if you were not attending college, so kung hindi ka nag-MBA na lang ngayon, o baka nagtatrabaho ka ngayong Saturday. Diba? O ito, in this example, if you were not attending college, you could be earning 15,000. So you have an opportunity cost of attending college for 1 year, and that is 15,000. Diba? If you are not studying in college, diba? Dapat nag-work ka na eh. Eh kung nag-work ka, dapat kinita mo is 15,000. So, the opportunity cost of studying in college is 15,000. Did you get that? Example, I have a condominium unit. Kung hindi ko siya matitirhan, pwede ko siyang i-rent out for 20,000 per month. Since tinirhan ko siya, yung pagtira ko doon, meron siyang opportunity cost na 20,000 per month. Did you get that? No? Okay, another example. You have the opportunity to work here, dito sa Pilipinas. You have another opportunity to work abroad. No? If you work here, you earn 20,000. If you work abroad, you earn 100,000. So if I decide to work here, then the opportunity cost is 100,000. If I decide to work abroad, the opportunity cost is 20,000. So it is the benefit, no, that you are foregoing. The benefit foregone for choosing an alternative. That is the opportunity cost. Okay, next. Sunk cost. Ayan. Ang pagkakalam ko sa sunk cost, ang tawag namin dito, past cost. And it is never relevant. No, never relevant. Kasi past. Na-incur mo na yung decision. Eh. Di ba sabi ko kanina to be relevant, no? Dapat differential siya. Cost must differ. No? And it must be a future cost. Sunk cost is a past cost, so it's not relevant. Sunk costs have already been incurred and cannot be changed now or in the future. That's why they are not relevant for decision making. I'll give you an example. You bought an automobile that cost $10,000 2 years ago. The $10,000 cost is sunk because whether you drive it, park it, trade it, or sell it, you cannot change the $10,000 cost. You understand sunk cost? It's not relevant for decision making. Okay, let's have a quick check. Let's read. Okay. Suppose you are trying to decide whether to drive or take the train to Kuala Lumpur to attend a concert. You have ample cash to do either, but you don't want to waste money needlessly. Is the cost of the train ticket relevant in this decision? In other words, should the cost of the train ticket affect the decision of whether you drive or take the train to Kuala Lumpur? Sagot. Is it relevant yung cost ng ticket, yung transportation cost? Kasi pagpipilian mo yan, mamamasahe ka sa train or kung magdadrive ka, bibili ka ng gas. Is it relevant? Yes or no? Huwag matakot. Ang sagot ay yes. Yes, the cost of the train ticket is relevant. Guys, huwag kayong matakot sumagot. Ha? Hindi ko sasabihin ay mali. Walang ganon. No? Okay. Next. Another quick check. Suppose you are trying to decide whether to drive or take the train to Kuala Lumpur to attend a concert. Again, you have ample cash to do either, but you don't want to waste money needlessly. Is the annual cost of licensing your car relevant in this decision? Relevant ba yung registration na binabayaran natin every year? Kaya ginamit mo yung kotse mo or sumakay ka ng tren? Sagot, yes or no?
No.
No,
sir.
the licensing cost is not relevant. Actually, kahit hindi mo ginamit yung kotse mo, nasa bahay mo lang siya nakapark for 1 year. Darating yung 1 year, magre-renew ka ng rehistro mo sa LTO. Alright, next. Another quick check. Suppose that your car could be sold now for 5,000. I repeat, pwede mo raw siyang ibenta ngayon for 5,000. Sunk cost ba yun? Sunk cost is past cost. Eh. So, it is not a sunk cost kasi future cost too. Gets? Alright. So, summary of the types of cost classifications. You have financial reporting. We had this. You're predicting cost behavior. Ano yung kanina yung cost behavior natin? Yung variable at saka yung fixed. Ito yung assigning cost to cost objects and then making business decisions. Ito kanina yung mga direct at saka indirect. No? Tapos ito yung mga opportunity cost, relevant cost. And the other one is the sunk cost. Alright. So,